They didn't tell you the bolts aren't going to come off. Follow me. I'll show you how to get that tank off with the least amount of pain. All right, so before we actually go underneath the toilet tank, I just wanted to show you what I have here. These are, this is a tank bowl kit, and I've excluded the flush valve gasket because flush valve gaskets are very specific. So depending upon the manufacturer of the toilet, for instance, American Standard, Gerber, Kohler, Elger, I mean, the list goes on and on. The flush valve gaskets are pretty specific. So if you're working on a particular manufacturer's toilet tank, you would be well advised to get their flush valve gasket kit. They make kits with a universal gasket, but I always find that it works out better if you can get the exact gasket that's made for that particular toilet tank. But anyway, getting back to the bolts here. So these bolts that you're looking at, these are all brass bolts. They come with all brass components. They come with brass washers. They come with a brass nut. And this is what I use. I mean, I buy these professionally. You can't always get these in the home centers. Most time when you buy a toilet to tank bolt kit, you will definitely get brass bolts. But I find that most of the time you are going to get galvanized steel washers and galvanized steel nuts. And as I stated in a previous video, you get this thing that goes on called electrolysis. And electrolysis is a process that happens between two dissimilar metals, and the galvanized will actually start to rust and it will fuse itself onto the brass bolt. And that's when the problem arises, when you go to change the tank bowl gasket or you're going to replace the bolts because the washer started to leak. They will not turn, they will not come off. So, and when that happens, you pretty much have two choices. You're either going to go with a hacksaw blade and try to remove the bolts or cut them. Yeah, you literally have to cut them off. Or you're going to use the SawZall method. And now, unless you have experience with power tools, I'm not going to recommend you use the SawZall method. If you do, on the other hand, you can have a go at it. But let me, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull, I have a tank and bowl up here up on the bench. I'm going to pull that into frame. And I'll show you, what I do and, what you could do if you're faced with having to remove the tank from the bowl, but you just cannot get those bolts to turn. And so stand with me. I will be right back. All right, real quickly before I bring the tank and bowl up on the bench here, the three methods. If I have the room, I'm always going to use my reciprocating saw. I have a 10-inch blade in there. Right now, that blade has got 10 teeth per inch. I'm going to try to use my 18 teeth per inch blade. If I have the room, I'm going to use a reciprocating saw. And if you have no experience using a reciprocating saw or power tools of any kind, I highly recommend you do not use this method because you can very easily crack the tank, the bowl, or both. Second choice, and probably the one I use most of the time, is to get one of these little tools here that you can mount a hacksaw blade in. And I'm going to use a teeth that's, I'm going to use a blade that's 24 teeth per inch. Generally, it's a good all-purpose blade. This is what I'm going to use most of the time. And I also will take my Lennox hacksaw and I'll actually set up a blade in the handle like that, 24 teeth per inch again, and I will use this if I have the room. So with that in mind, let's jump up and I'll put this tank and bowl up on the bench and we'll get on with the task at hand. All right, here we are up on the bench, and albeit this is a demo bench and I have probably more room than you probably have working in your little tiny bathroom. The toilet's probably stuck somewhere between a wall and a sink. And hey, I get it. This is what I do all day long. Now, when you run across a situation where these bolts will not come off, either because you have a combination of galvanized nuts, wing nuts, or whatever the case may be. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you can see here, but this wing nut here is galvanized iron. But this is a rig I use in my videos down in my shop, so this isn't exposed to water, so there's not a problem. But in real life, You may have a galvanized wing nut. You may have a galvanized nut in combination with galvanized washers. And even the nut here, there's a nut here that actually is holds the bolt onto the tank. There is another nut. Well, actually, in this case, there isn't another nut. There's a wing nut that holds the tank onto the bolt. Sometimes you'll have two nuts. Sometimes you'll have one nut, as you see here, and then you'll have another nut on the bottom. In this case here, I have a wing nut. It depends on, where you're getting these tank bolt kits from. Again, if you're going to be faced with the situation and you actually got to go through the pain of taking the tank off, then I recommend when you do replace them, get everything all brass. You won't have to be faced with this again. But basically, when these won't come off, I know, you'll put a screwdriver inside the tank. You'll try to hold back the bolt. You'll come down here with a pair of pliers, and you're going to kill yourself trying to get these things off. And, sometimes maybe through your futile effort, it'll work. But you know what? Most times when I see that I have galvanized components, I don't even bother trying to do it. I got a business here, I got to get in, I got to get out. I'm trying to do it the most effective and quickest way I can. So my first choice is going to be, if I have the room, I'm going to come in with my SawZall, and just bear with me here. I'm just going to bring this real closely in here. Here you see my Milwaukee SawZall. Now that blade I have on here is not the blade I'm going to use. This has got 10 teeth per inch. I'm probably going to use a blade that's 18 teeth per inch. It's a little finer blade, and I'm going to go in, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to find myself, the sweet spot, so to speak, and we want to get that blade right on the bolt here. And once we got that in the right spot, we're going to be coming in from the right or the left. We're not going to be able to go in directly in front, because I don't know if you can see here, there's a stop here. So I can't come in from the front of this tank. I'm going to have to come in from the side. And when you're working in a tight bathroom, you don't always have that kind of room. But anyway, if I can get in here with a blade, I'm going to proceed with my reciprocating saw, and I'm going to cut away, and it's going to be a relatively fast procedure. But guys, if you have no experience with power tools, and if you're a little apprehensive about using them, I suggest you don't, because you can crack the tank, you can crack the bowl, you can crack both of them. So again, this is going to be my preferred method if I have the room. But I got to tell you that 9 out of 10 times I do not have the room. And when I do not have the room, I am going to do it the old-fashioned way, the way I was taught as a kid. And basically, I'm going to come in with my little hacksaw tool here, which is a tool. It's basically a handle, if you can see that. And several manufacturers make these. This is not the only one out there. And I'm holding my hacksaw blade in there. And I'm going to use, generally speaking, 24 teeth per inch, which is kind of like a medium duty or an all-purpose blade. A 24 tooth per inch hacksaw blade. And we're going to come in here, and we are going to very carefully, and we're going to go through the process. And I know it's going to be painful, guys. Very, very painful. You're going to be sweating. You're going to be killing yourself. Listen, this is the safest way of doing it. I think you'll be able to get it done. It may take you a little longer. Again, I can't come in from the front here because I don't know if you can see here. We have the stop here, so it's very difficult to actually get. Well, actually, the blade is slipping through there, but you want to try to get it to a point where you don't have to cut through the nut. If you look at the blade now, it's actually cutting through the nut. And listen, if that's the way it has to be, that's the way it has to be. Again, we're dealing with room. If you have the room, you can certainly position this blade any way you want, but a lot of cases you're working in between a wall and a sink, and you don't always have the luxury of placing the blade exactly where it needs to be. But there is no magic to what's got to be done here. You have to go through the pain of cutting this off. If you monkey around with these things long enough and you try to kill yourself spraying stuff on there and you try to hold back on the bolt inside, ultimately you could either crack the tank, crack the bowl, or both. Again, this is just one method, one handle. Sometimes, depends on the situation. I'll even, if you look at this here, I have this is my frame hacksaw, my my Lennox frame hacksaw. And I'll actually stick my blade in the handle like that. I'll just secure it in there with that screw, and I'll actually proceed to go in there. Again, depends on what kind of room I got. And then we're going to cut away. 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 So, folks, that's it. There is no magic to how you do this. The only magic is getting the thing cut off without cracking the tank or cracking the bowl. And that's it, folks. So if you have questions on this method, or maybe something I didn't explain right, you can always reach me, info@bobsplumbingvideos.com. I would love your comments. I would love you to subscribe. I'm looking for more subscribers. Share these videos with your friends. You know, I'm out there trying to help you guys save some cash by not having to call a plumber. And a lot of these things I do are not all that difficult. They just have to be done in a process. So folks, there you have it. How to go through the process of cutting this bolt off. Again, if you have experience with power tools, hey, you know what? Go for it. If not, do yourself a favor. Just get yourself a nice little hacksaw blade, 24 teeth per inch. You go in there, get yourself a can of soda, a cup of coffee, and you cut, you know, take a rest, take a break, and you go through it. And this is going to come off, and you're going to be on your way to replacing that tank to bowl kit. And there you have it, folks. So listen, my pleasure. Look forward to seeing you in my next video. As I always like to say, happy plumbing. Hey folks, it's Bob here. If you find these videos helpful, please hit that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to claim your free video series, The 7 Things You Shouldn't Have to Pay a Plumber to Do. And to learn more about how to prevent a plumbing disaster in your home, check out my new video course, The No-Brainer Home Plumbing Inspection Checklist. Happy plumbing.